Everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Chefpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Andres Hinojosa. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Now, before I bring up our special guest today, I want to just make sure that you guys understand that we try to go live every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern to do these amazing interviews. And really, we want to make sure that you share this YouTube channel. So subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it, let other people know about it. And so we'd really love for you guys to continue to tune in and share and spread the love. So again, thank you guys for all your support as well. So without further ado, again, if you're watching here live on YouTube or maybe you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, we are interviewing Sheranda Stills today out of Katy, Texas. And I'm really excited to bring her on and really just get to know her and get to know her background. And I'd really love to just have this conversation. Without further ado, let's bring on Chef Sheranda. Chef, how are you doing today? Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, I know before the show, as we were prepping for the show, you were already telling me all about yourself. And I'm like, Chef, we got to stop. We got to put this on the show. Okay, this is going to be good. And so I want you to just kind of disclose a little bit about yourself. Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. We know that you're from Katy, Texas, but
Right.
give us a little bit of your background and your journey, Chef.
Okay, well, I'm born and raised out of Los Angeles, California. My mother was a self made chef. My father was in the military. He baked cakes and he also boxed as well. So, with having those two people in my life, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So when I started cooking, I was young. I was doing a lot of cooking around the house. And then I just perfected my cooking by going to school to Escoffier Culinary Arts School right there. It's up in Austin and there's one in Boulder, Colorado. So I
Awesome.
decided to do the chef work at home, which is online. That's out of Boulder, Colorado. It's a very good accredited school.
Okay. And so now what did you do before you went to culinary school? Did you work in kind of culinary arts industry, or did you work at restaurants or anything like that, or what were you doing there?
Okay, so I was in a chain of restaurants. I was working at the hospital, restaurants, just doing things that got me out there where people get to know who I am, and
Mm,
signature dishes that I were making that the company let me make for like people there that were working at the business. So I would do that and they would be like, we need to get this on the menu. We need to get this on the menu. You need to put this on the menu. So I was pretty much opening up doors for new things to go on the menu. And quite naturally it got shut down, after a while. They're like, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. Because it was so big and so vibrant. They were
mm.
ready for new. They had to stay at the standards what they needed to have there. So I didn't get mad. I was like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of that corporate aspect of it, right? Which is, obviously the movement that we have and even the podcast here, Chefpreneur. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Chef entrepreneurs. We're all about really helping people start their own business and really getting out there. Tell us a little bit about, so when did you graduate culinary school, did you say?
Yes, I graduated in 2011, and I
Okay.
graduate. I'm graduating this year in November because I just finished my pastry chef class.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you have culinary arts degree, 2011, and now you went back for pastry.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. That's awesome. That's great. And so, Chef, tell us a little bit about what's going on now currently. Like, are you currently working somewhere or you have your own business? Tell us about that.
Okay, I have my own business. I do catering, and sometimes people say, "Well, can you just come and cook for me and my wife or me and my family?" And I'll go do it. And I do like the intimate dinners and stuff like that for two or even more. I don't have the problem with doing it, but it gets a little testy at times because you wait for people to call, they'll book you, and they cancel, they don't get their deposit back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now, you said that you do catering. What's your business called? Your catering company?
it's Stills Catering Service.
Stills Catering. Okay. And when did you start that?
I started this back, what, in 2000. I was cooking in California. People would call, hey, can you do this for me? I got a graduation coming up. It's a party of 40. Can you do it? Yep. Get right on it.
Okay, great. And what inspired you really to say, "Hey, I want to I want to start my own business? Like, when did that moment come into play for you?
It came into play for me with my mom. She's the outstanding cook of the family, her and my brother. So, and I said, well, I want to do this. I want to make this a business. So when I started doing it, I turned it into a straight up and down business. I began to cook, and people said, "Wow, you look like your mom. You cook like your mom. The food is great. We appreciate you." And even my sister, she's like, "Look at you. I'm the first chef in my family that holds that degree."
Wow, that's really impressive. That's really awesome. And is your mom still with us today?
No, my mom has passed on
Oh,
2016.
okay. So you've kind of paid a homage to your mom as well by, I think, really just not only using the talents and the gifts that God gave you, but also just again kind of instilling that heart in your business that your mom had for cooking, and it sounds like even for serving and loving people. Does that sound correct?
Yep, that's
Uh,
it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what would you say, Chef? Do you have any specialties in your business and things that you focus on? Like, what is the niche that you're focused in on your catering company?
Okay, my catering, we do a lot of soul food, but then my soul food that I just gear in on that people always ask for, collard greens, sweet potatoes. My cornbread is superb. I do
Mm,
different types of cornbread. I do jalapeno cornbread, cheese cornbread. It's just, I just put everything in it. Just whatever they ask
sounds
for.
delicious. You're making me hungry, and I just ate lunch. I love that. So, like soul food, do you do other types of cuisine, or do you feel like you mostly just stay in your wheelhouse?
No, I come out of there. I do pastas. I make my own sauces. I never buy nothing. I do everything from scratch. So I do a lot of shrimp and Alfredos. I do different things. I even do things from Nigeria. I do things
Oh
from
wow.
so I touch bases. I even go on the French cuisine and I start making different things from there too as well.
I love that. I love that. That's really awesome. I've never really dove into sometimes. I mean, I've done some international foods myself, but nothing like from Nigeria or I mean, I've eaten food from Africa that's delicious that I know, but I don't never really dove into cooking some of that. And but it's so tasty. Like Ethiopian food is delicious. Like I love Ethiopian food. I'm a nut about anything with food, and spice is really good. But that's really awesome. Now, what do you feel like your future in your company is? Like, is that all you're doing is full time in your business right now?
Yes, I'm very full time in it.
Awesome, awesome. And how's it going? Like, is it growing? Does it feel like you've been able to support yourself really well?
Well, it's up and down because when the economy changes, things changes. When COVID hit, it knocked me out the water. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah,
You couldn't really do nothing. Nobody wanted no food from nobody because COVID. So I
yeah.
couldn't sell nothing. I was at a standstill. I was like, oh my God, I'm at my wits' end now. And had to go back to the drawing board. I said, you know what? Let me do this. Let me start doing things. Let me start, doing things in packaging. Let me look and see who can, who I can go work with that has vacuum sealed things. What can I do to still get my money? So we started doing vacuum sealed things and selling them that way. And I still made some money, but not enough. But it was okay. I sustained myself at that time.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. And now fast forward to today, it's you said it's up and down, but is it consistent enough like to pay your bills to cover everything that you need?
Not really, because a lot of people are dependent upon, like, they all go to the restaurants. Most of them are in restaurants. They're like, well, I don't want a personal chef right now. I'm not always here. I just want something quick so I can grab. So they go to fast foods a lot. So I know at
Mm,
the first of the year, I see my business flourishing where I can't even ascertain it because I prayed for this. I said, I got a breakthrough coming, so I'm not worried about it. I stand faith. I stand down, 10 toes down on my faith.
I love that. I love that. Well, I know that we're interviewing you on this podcast, but I always look at opportunities when they come. And I think that that Chefpreneur will all about really helping people with a personal chef business, very specifically. We don't really teach anything on catering. However, you can set your personal chef business up where you could do larger events and still build them as a personal chef and still set up the systemized that way. What about, if you don't mind me asking, and maybe this is something that maybe I can even enlighten you on. Do you realize that there is a difference between the personal chef and the catering business model?
Oh yes, it's very different.
Okay, that's good. And now I'm not trying to tell you to stop doing catering because that's not what I'm here to do. But I will say that, we really believe that the personal chef business model is the best business model to really build a business successfully off of our passion of food, right? And because there's so little overhead, there's so much more profit margin. There's a lot of things that go into it, and we won't really dive into every single thing today. But really, I would really challenge you, for lack of a better word, to say, hey, you know, what if I went down the path more of being a personal chef? Because I can tell you one thing while you're sitting here on this podcast, as sure as I am looking at you, the personality that you have and the warmth that you have and the heart that you have is really incredible. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of people say, well, to be a personal chef, you have to have a good personality. I don't really know if I fully believe that necessarily. I do say though that the chef is definitely part of the experience, of course, right? We're serving people, or we're loving on people. Yes, we're feeding them. Yes, the food should and has to be good and delicious. But really, the overall experience that they're getting is what they're investing in. That's really what they're wanting, is not to be fed. So when you brought up that your clients are going a lot to fast food, that's sometimes the problem with catering, or even sometimes the problem with like meal delivery and some of these other things. They're really just trying to eat, they're trying to be fed. And so they're looking for the, I don't want to say cheapest route, but the more budget friendly route to say, how do I get decent food, and just have it as fuel and kind of eat. As a personal chef though, it's a different experience, and even catering falls a lot into feeding people. I was actually doing research the other day just to kind of enlighten everybody here that, as far as catering businesses, like in the catering sector, which there's a lot of catering companies in the United States, everything from, of course, like even a Jimmy John's or a Jersey Mike's is quote unquote doing catering sandwich packages, right? Like everything from, corporate entities like that to mom and pop catering to luxury high end catering. The amount of percentage of the market that is luxury catering is usually only around 5% or less. It's very small. And those luxurious caterers are the ones that have the exclusive contracts at the big museums in the downtown of New York and things like that, right? They're very high end. They got the caviar, the hors d'oeuvres, the suit and tie waiters and waitresses. It can be very premium. Um, and even then, they're really combating against the other premium luxury services as far as catering goes, because the stipulation of catering companies is really in the mind of people. It's a very different kind of people that hire catering companies because they want to be fed. They're looking at chicken, rice, potatoes, like even all the good stuff that you produce. They're looking for just, pans of food necessarily to be delivered to feed people. And there's money to be made there, don't get me wrong, but for the efforts that we do, it is more of a numbers game. And in the personal chef side, because I just have to encourage you, I have to love on you here, because your personality and who you are is much more valuable than I probably guarantee you realize. Like, that you have a great personality, you cook good. I'm not saying you don't know it, but I coach so many chefs and I really see such potential in so many people. And when I see it, I have to call it out. And a lot of people don't realize that people will pay $100, $120 per person to you. Even you, yes, I'm not talking about other chefs. I'm talking about you right now, to really get the experience and the heart and the level of servitude that you have. And so, maybe even after the podcast, we can maybe link up and talk deeper and dive deeper into some of these things. But the truth is that this is why we personally, again, believe that the best business model. And some people might say, Chef, you have a chef on, Chef Sheranda, who really like has her catering company. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to talk anybody out of doing their own business and what they're doing, clearly. But I also have to say, hey, entrepreneurship is like climbing a mountain, and the mountain is going to be tough no matter what you do as far as entrepreneurship goes. But it's the vehicle that you're in that possibly can make it a lot easier to get to the top. And people that are starting restaurants with a lot of overhead, a lot of money, takes for an investment to get that started, and low profit margin and high overhead, there's so much against you. It's kind of like trying to climb the mountain on a little Tykes little plastic tricycle. Okay, it's going to be very difficult, right? Then you
Yeah.
move into like a catering business or a food truck. Well, the overhead is a little bit less, but there's still quite a bit of money to get started. And in order to hit the levels of income that you need, it's like, okay, now we're giving you a bicycle. At least you're not in a little plastic tricycle, you're in a bicycle. I'm a very metaphorical guy, if you can tell. But then
Yeah.
a personal chef business, I feel like, okay, you're still climbing the same mountain, but now you're in a 4x4 Jeep. Okay. It's a lot easier to get there. It's still going to be, you're going to still have to steer and make sure that you don't slip and take the wrong turn and, skid down a little bit of the mountain, but you're able to climb it much better, much quicker. And so, but I love how, like, I really love your heart. I can feel your heart. Now, we were talking again before the show that you are a believer. I actually personally just want to know, like, how does faith play a factor in a role? Because you've mentioned already a couple of times in the show that you're like, listen, I've already spoke out my blessing. It's coming. So I'm not worried. And then even before that, you're like, you told me before the show, I'm anxious for nothing, which is what the word of God says, right? Be anxious for nothing. But I want to know how that plays, how your faith plays a role in kind of your business and your everyday life. I want to know that personally.
Well, when you manifest something and you give it to God, you got to leave it there. You don't go back and say, "Oh, God, please help me, help me." No, you leave it there and you let God do his work. And when things come in
I like
as
that.
you manifest it, you're like, "Oh my God, it happened for me." You just have to believe that you will receive those gifts that are coming to you. I stand on faith every day. I didn't have no money. Quick example. I didn't have nothing. I said, God, I believe in you and you're going to bring it to me. Next thing you know, my phone goes off and I'm like, what is this? So I go check my bank account. I'm like, $300. That's it. You got to stand on faith and you got to believe that you're going to receive the blessings from God. It's not about going and calling and asking, hey, can I get $30? Hey, can I get $20? No, you have to believe
I
and
love
get.
that. I love that. And honestly, I think that, it kind of opens up a whole nother direction, a little bit of the conversation, because I think when people ask, entrepreneurship again is not easy, right? Starting a business, it's not easy, right? Obviously, getting coaching, getting advice, having mentors in your corner. The Word of God says to seek wise advisors, right? Like, there's a lot of wisdom in that. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean it takes away everything is just easy. There's going to be struggle, and most of it happens between our 2 ears, right? Most of it happens in our mind, and so it could be very challenging sometimes to overcome some of these thoughts mentally as we're going through our business. The one thing I wanted to ask you is that, as we go through really entrepreneurship and as you've been going through your journey, I think one of the things that we can't do, and I can clearly see that you're not a person that does this, is I always give the advice of, like, we just cannot give up, right? Um, is there ever been a time, and we could be just, honest here, because there's been times where even in my entrepreneurship journey, in fact, this last year, or this year per se, we're almost at the end of it, which is crazy. I've hit some of my deepest discouraging moments in my entire life this year. And it wasn't really necessarily always intertwined with finances. It was just some deep discouragement that I was facing. And I think, again, I don't want to try to preach here, but the word of God talks about that we can't live, and we can't live by our emotions and our feelings alone, right? And or even our heart will lead us astray. The fact of the matter is we can feel certain things. We can feel discouraged. We can feel defeated, but we have to continue to press on. We can't make those decisions based on that. Can you maybe give us a time in your life, if you have any, where you felt really discouraged, where it would have been normal for other people and even easy for you to say, I'm giving up on this dream. I'm giving up on moving forward. I'm giving up on pressing in. Were you ever at a time where you felt like you were really in the lows, but still continued to pull through?
Yeah. And most definitely, I was on this one job, and it was just like, I said, God, what do you want me to do? Because they're fighting, they're yelling at me every day. And
Oh man.
I said, what can I do? He says, just be peaceful, just smile and have peace. So when you have peace, peace surpasses everything, no matter the low or the high. Peace surpasses everything. So with the peace I have, I don't let it get me down. I stay smiling and I keep pressing in. And that's what I was always taught to do, press in and keep going.
I love that. One of my favorite scriptures, I think that is so good for any entrepreneur that's listening to this, really any chef, period, but really just is Galatians 6:9. It's my favorite scripture. I used to have as my screensaver on my phone. I might bring it back because I had to look at it every single day. And it says, do not grow weary of doing good. Do not grow weary of doing good, for at a proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. It's really easy sometimes to look at that word and say, there's not much spiritualness going on with do not give up. Well, there kind of is. Of course, like you said earlier, we have to depend on God. We have to really put our faith and trust in Him, which allows us to not give up, mentally, physically, practically speaking. But when you really think about it, it's not saying, just continue to get on your knees and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray till you're blue in the face. It just says, don't give up. And a lot of times I feel like, this is a word in season for a lot of people. There's a lot of people that face challenges, and sometimes it's nonstop. They might feel like, well, some people have a bad day, some people have a bad week, some people have a bad 3 months, and some people feel like they had a bad decade. The fact of the matter is we have to continue to push forward and move through. So thank you for sharing that, Chef, where it's like, you felt all the stress and pressure of a job. You felt like them coming at you every single day, probably the most toxic work environment sounds like you faced. And you said, probably, and that's probably saying it lightly, right? And then you're like, but I just got to have peace and pull through and push through. I love that. And again, I'll kind of leave it with this. Entrepreneurship, I believe, is the most holy of work because you don't have a boss to depend on to give you a paycheck. You don't have a company you depend on to give you a paycheck. You're literally partnered in your business with God. He's the ultimate president of the board. He's the president. He's technically probably the CEO when you really think about it. And we're just stewards of what he's given us. And realistically, we have to do the business with him. Otherwise, we will fail and we'll fall apart. And so I think that entrepreneurship is beautiful in that sense. So, Chef, thank you so much for opening up from your past and just kind of giving us a little bit of that. And do you mind, at this point in kind of the podcast, I like to kind of flip the script and just see if you use any questions you want to ask me that I can answer for you.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So how was it when you first started
Hmm.
as a chef?
As a chef or my business?
How, as your chef, as being a chef?
As
How?
being a chef. Well, that was many years ago, but when I just remember since, and I won't go tell you my life story, but when I was young, my grandmother Yaya, that's my, dad's mom. She passed away. Her name was Carmen, but I used to call her Yaya. She was an amazing cook. And she really instilled a lot of things in me. I think just the passion of loving food, loving cooking, and loving serving people. When I was very young, she'd live with us when my parents worked together. And she was kind of like, she was my grandma, but, she kind of helped take care of us. And I just really instilled in that. And since I was young, since I really could actually fathom a profession in my mind, it's always been to be a chef. There was never a time I could think where it wasn't, that's what I wanted to be. I mean, I would record, a 10, 11 years old, 12 years old, I'd record great chefs on PBS. I'd get home from school, record it on my VHS on the recorder and watch the shows over and over. Probably not your typical, 11-year-old, 12-year-old child boy doing that. When I finally made the decision to go to culinary school, I was actually 17 years old. I graduated culinary school when I was 18. Literally, I was 22 days before I was turned 19. I graduated culinary school. went to culinary school in San Francisco, and I was off to the races. I think one of the things that I realized was when I first started, quote unquote, as a professional cook, I I guess I really realized very quickly how much I did not know about food, right? You go to culinary school and you learn a lot of basics, you learn a lot of things, and then you're in the real world in the industry, and it is very different. But I just put my head down. I put my head down and I worked hard. And I've always been someone who just loves to learn. I was just talking about this today with someone, and my wife was like, "Yeah, you like to learn. I really don't like to learn." I was like, "Yeah, that's true, babe." My wife will like to learn about the word and the Lord and things like that, but she's not all about learning just for learning's sake. But I really put my head down and started to understand just how to be not only a better cook, how to use ingredients, how to manage a kitchen. My entire career was through luxury hotels, Four Seasons, Ritz Carlton, Grand Del Mar. I did a stint at the convention center. I was the Garmin J chef there in San Diego. And I think that what's changed a little bit, if I'm going to be honest, in the industry has been the level of mentorship that's out there in the kitchen as a chef. When I was kind of stepping into being a chef professionally speaking, I felt like there was more chefs that were wanting to take people under their wing as there is now, and teaching them a little bit more about, maybe not about the business side, of course, about cooking and about organizing things and just making them a better cook all around. And my mentor was Chef Jason White in that. I really want to get him on the podcast. We got to do that sometime. But the biggest thing for me was really understanding that, like, you just can't stop learning. You have to continue to learn. And I think the industry as a whole has taken, unfortunately, a turn not for the better of mentorship. There's been a loss of mentorship, apprenticeship in this industry, and you can really tell. And culinary schools, there's a lot of culinary schools, and they're great. They are very educational. They give you a lot of great information. They teach you a level of skills. But I think there's nothing like a nuance as a mentor. I don't know if that really answered your question or not, but
Yeah.
that's how I felt like it was when I first started. And even to this day, where it's kind of evolved and our industry has kind of evolved into different things and lack thereof. So,
Right. You know, being part of the mentorship, I have one person that I tutored. His name is Corey. He's down there in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He called me one day. He says, I got to make some pasta. I got to do shrimp Alfredo. I said, well, get a pen and piece of paper. Let me give you the recipe. And I started talking to him, and he got quiet. He started writing. He said, so did you say butter? I said, yes, I did. Unsalted. Because if you use unsalted, you can be able to season to a certain level. If you use salted and you put salt, it's going to be too salty. So when I was explaining that to him, and I say, you need to weigh everything out. Ounces, pounds, and gallons. You need to be able to weigh your stuff out and have the right measurements. He says, okay, I got you. He goes to work. He works in the kitchen. So he made it. And I said, when you garnish it, put some parsley over the top. Not a lot, just a hint, just a little bit, so it makes the colors pop. He did it. He took it to school. His chef tasted it. And he said, what did you do? So he was able to recall everything he did.
yeah.
He said, this tastes great. And you got an A. He said, my first A ever.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
he got it in his back pocket.
Well, I think that's what it is. I think it's the nuances of being able to have someone guide you a little bit, not only further but more in depth and give you more detail and give you that extra thing that is not just learning how to do it, but really showing, guiding, correcting how to do things. And I think that's again something that I think is sorely missed in the industry. And again, I'm very blessed that I felt like I had someone who really showed me. Uh, Sometimes a little bit hardcore, to be honest. He was no easy picnic to work for, but it was also did me a lot of good. So, great question. Anything else that you want to ask me?
Pretty much you've answered everything without me even having to ask.
Oh well, that's typical Andres, right? I mean, I know that a question you submitted before was, which I kind of did answer, but you asked where I went to culinary school.
Yeah.
And it was CCA. It was called California Culinary Academy. It's no longer in existence, I don't believe. But it was in San Francisco on Polk Street, 625 Polk. I remember that, like it, I remember the address by heart. And I lived about a block and a half away. It was in the Tenderloin of San Francisco, which is really not the good part of the city. Very not good part of the city. We're talking about heroin addicts on my doorstep and drug dealers on the corner, and it was not the most pleasant experience. But the city of San Francisco, so much food, so much culture in that sense. It was a playground for culinary arts. And the school was really good. At the end of the culinary school, it got sold, I believe, to another company, and they were really cutting costs, and it went really, unfortunately, south. But I was kind of like, that was like a couple months before I graduated. So I kind of got in and got out at the right time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was possibly going to go to the CIA in Hyde Park, New York, in upstate New York, but I prayed about it and felt that God was leading me to San Francisco. And I met some amazing people in school that are still friends to this day, and honestly helped guide and mentor me as well when I was there, and even helped provide for meals for me. I mean, I was a broke college student, so I was living off of Whoppers and French fries and dollar slice pizzas. Um, it was pretty surreal, but again, God took care of me and really brought me it really brought me full circle. So that's awesome, and I'm really thankful for, again, all that God has done in my life and where I've come from and where we're going and where we're heading, and it's all glory to God. That is the only thing that has been the source in my life to provide me everything that I have. Um, the more, I don't know if it's like the more I get older and the more I see certain things more clear, I think it's more revelation on who God is and God's word. Um, I mean, it's all His, and I really don't deserve any credit, other than just me saying yes, being obedient, and just taking the steps of what He's telling me to do. But I think that's continually something that I look at in my life. And just as you kind of, I think you can really attest to this, Chef, as you go through life and you go back and you see things and trials and tribulations and struggles that you've gone through. It's amazing how the further in your journey and the further in the future that you go, and you look at your past experiences, it's almost like you see God more in your life, right? You're like, wait, in that moment I felt like, where was God? And then 10 years down the line, you're like, oh my God was all over it, to even be like, there was things that He did 10 years ago that got me like here, right? So it's crazy how God just continues to work in our lives. But that's awesome. Any last thoughts or questions, Chef, that you want to ask me while we're on together on this podcast?
Well, it's levels. It's levels. You have to look at every level. See, when you're on your journey, it's a level. So you got your level one. You start off by saying, I'm going to get this going. You have to get motivated. You have to get that ball rolling. Once you get it rolling and you say, okay, well, I'm going to give it to God, and you just keep going. As you go, God going to go with you. So it's pretty much a walk of faith.
Yeah,
And I think my journey is really rolling. I mean, like, I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? I'm very happy in who I am. I'm comfortable in my skin.
I love that.
I love, my perception of what I have, and I'm willing to work with you, off of here, wherever you trying to take me, let's go. I'm ready to work with you. And
Oh,
who
that's sweet. That's sweet of you. Well, I just really appreciate your time, Chef, and I thank you for opening up and sharing your background with us and sharing a bit about your story and, honestly, about your faith. I think it's important for us to just continue to acknowledge the Word and acknowledge the Lord in all that we do. We are not shy of that in Chefpreneur at all. In fact, probably on the contrary. And we just really enjoyed having you today, Chef. We really appreciate your time and for you coming on. And, if you guys, do you want to give a little plug for your catering company there in Katy, Texas? If anybody's looking for some great services, do you want to make a little plug today?
Yeah, we can do this here. Okay, so if you go to my Instagram page, which is my first name, I think it's the number 8 on there. It is. So when you go there, you can look on my page at all my pictures. I also have a business card on there. You also can call me through the app. You can call me through Facebook. I'm right there for you. I'm just a thing, just a little dial away.
Awesome. Well, what is your Instagram handle?
My Instagram handle is my first name, Sheranda8.
All right, let me write this down. I'll put it on the screen. So, Sheranda, right?
The number 8.
Okay.
And I also have pictures up of what I've done. I do some wild creations. Like I have stuff up there that, and I do things out of the box. If you tell me, hey, I want a charcuterie board, I said, okay, so what you like and what you don't like. Okay, so when they tell me, they say, just go for it. Just use your imagination, and I just go crazy.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, if you guys want to check her out, I have it on the screen now to book Chef Sheranda. Go to her Instagram handle at Sheranda8. Check out her food, get a call scheduled, book her. And Chef, again, I want to just really say thank you again for being on the show today. And it was a blessing to get to talk to you and interview you today. And I'm really excited to see where your journey and your future goes and where God takes you. And we're believing with you and we're standing in the gaps with you as well to continue to see that success. Guys, remember, if you have not liked this video, please like this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, as well as make sure you hit the bell for notifications. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next podcast. Take care. God bless you.